Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Walk with Raya. For those of you who don't know, I love creating these style of videos and I have a playlist full of them where I go for like a 10 to 20 minute walk and just like discuss a topic that I've been really processing or thinking about a lot or that I think can motivate and encourage you. And today I actually really want to talk about heart preparation, especially as a single Christian woman. So obviously I'm not single anymore, but obviously I went through seasons of singleness and getting to know the Lord in that time was just so special for me. So if you're not a Christian, I still think you'd really benefit from this talk because I still think there's a lot of advice or ideas of things that you could implement into your life, even if you don't believe in God. But I just think if you're a Christian woman, I definitely think that, I don't know, I feel like I've really been praying about what to share, and I just think God's put some certain points on my mind and on my heart to be able to share with everyone. I will go over my story briefly just so that those who don't know understand where I'm coming from. I just would have loved to have had some videos like this to be able to watch when I first got to know the Lord and went into a season of singleness, just trying to concentrate on my relationship with Him, grow my relationship with Him, and prepare to be a wife someday. Brief outline of, I guess, the order of events that happened around that time of my life. If you would like me to go into more detail about this topic and a bit of my testimony in that way, please let me know because I would love to share if people are interested in hearing it. But just briefly, I'll try and be as quick as I can. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My mum and dad had, I guess, experience with the Catholic Church a little bit, but were not active churchgoers or anything. I think we went at Christmas times to like a Catholic church on Christmas Eve every year, and that's about it. I definitely thought that there was a God. I definitely believed in a God, but I didn't really like him, if that makes sense. So what my opinion of God was, that he was some angry man up in heaven looking down on us, punishing us, causing a lot of pain because, I don't know, like growing up, we did have a fairly rough childhood and a lot of bad things happened. We've seen a lot of death. Like I lost count of how many times I've seen a dead person in a funeral home and also just how many times we had to go to funerals. And it just always seemed unfair. I was just always like, man, I do believe there's a God, but I don't like him and I don't want anything to do with him because like life sucks. Like even though there was obviously good things about my childhood, overall it was hard. And I was like, if there was a good God, he wouldn't have allowed any of that bad stuff to happen. Obviously now I know that God is so good and that it's the enemy's desire is for us to think badly of God's character. So when I was almost finished secondary school, that's when my dad actually found a church in our in our hometown of Warrnambool, and he started attending a church and he did the most massive 180 in his life. It's the biggest transformation ever. Like my dad's testimony is so cool. I'm gonna, in the description of this video, I'm actually gonna tag a link to a part of my dad's testimony. It was a really a professional video that was made showcasing just God's work in my dad's life, and it's such an amazing video, and it obviously shares a lot about his skydiving accident. His walk with the Lord has heavily affected me in a beautiful way. So yeah, I think that video is definitely worth watching. But my dad did the most biggest 180 and everyone in his life seen the massive transformation that occurred in his life when he got to know Jesus. And it was just so beautiful. Most of my family was not very supportive of my dad's new decision to go to church and spend time at church every weekend, except me. My little sister decided to go along with him. So we started going to church every now and then, but we just weren't in it. We didn't really know much. We didn't really care. I turned up to church in my trackies and Ugg boots and hoodie and we sat up the back on our phones and we weren't really involved with it at all. When I was 18, I started dating a guy who I ended up dating for 7 years. He was an amazing man. Obviously, we ended up breaking up when I was 25. That was when I decided to fully give my life to the Lord. And I just want to preface here that I actually made a lot of mistakes in that relationship. And I think that when we broke up, it was probably the biggest blessing over my life in terms of me realizing all of my weaknesses and all the areas that I really wanted development in. So I just want to say that here and now because I just know that the sort of person I was when I was with him wasn't the sort of person I just wanted to be. And God's really helped me in a lot of those areas. And that's kind of what I want to go through today is as a newly single woman at the age of 25, getting to know the Lord and just wanting to fully just pursue him, but also having the desire to be married one day, obviously in God's perfect timing. And I actually ended up going straight to a Bible school because I was like, I know that my life's so busy, full of things, I won't actually be able to really prioritize spending time with the Lord. So I wanted to really get to know the Bible, get to know God, and yeah, like I was just really excited for that new season. And I remember at this Bible school, just again, remember being very newly single at the age of 25, which for a woman, if you're a single woman around that age or older, you definitely understand how weird that is. Like there's an expectation almost that you're already going to be married and even already starting to have kids. So I had the kind of those expectations on myself, and it was a very uncomfortable season. And I remember sitting in that Bible school and we had a relationships talk, and the dude up the front said how he gave his life to the Lord in his mid-20s, and he said God told him that he had to be single for 5 years before he ended up marrying someone. And I remember thinking I remember listening to that talk and being like, there is no freaking way that I'm going to spend the next 5 years single. I was like, I'm not doing that. God won't tell me to do that. Nah, it's not going to happen. Anyway, God has a funny sense of humor, because it was exactly 5 years later when I started dating Jordan, and then we got married. So I actually was single for 5 whole years. But man, that season of my life was literally the most amazing journey. Like I just look back and just praise God and thank God that He gave me that amount of time to work on my weaknesses that He was revealing to me in a gentle way. It's not like He was like, Raya, you're a bad person. You treated your ex-boyfriend so crap. You did all these things. Like, you're a terrible person. It's not like He was like that to me. It's just like little gentle nudges, like, oh, the way that you used to do this, like, I want to change that in you. And like He really journeyed with me. And so there's a fair few points that I want to discuss, but I might just concentrate on just a few of them, just so that I don't overwhelm you guys. But again, I can do a part 2 to this talk if you'd like, so let me know in the comments. But one area that I really felt like God wanted me to change in is how I respond to what the people closest to me do. For example, I actually ended up doing a second Bible school, and in that, I still remember one of the main things I got from that was that in that class, in one of those classes, the person up the front was like telling the story about a tea bag, how a husband always left used a tea bag by the sink every single morning. And her question was to our whole class was like, what would you do? Like, what would your reaction be if your spouse always did that one thing every single day? And I remember thinking back to my previous relationship and being like, I would have been mad, but I would have kept it in until all of a sudden the madness just overbubbled, you know? And so because I didn't really like conflict too much, so it's not like I was straight away like going to, like automatically starting conflict. So I was a bit of a, standoff in that area, but it would blow up eventually, and that is not good. And I remember a fair few girls in the room being like, no, I wouldn't take it. And I remember just thinking, God, I want to be a woman or a wife who graciously cleans up that tea bag every single day without it worrying her at all. So not in a way of being like, I'm going to push this frustration to the side, but I want there to be no frustration to push to the side. Does that make sense? Like that's one area that I really wanted to work on, was my love and my joy for doing things for people, not out of a selfish ambition or deceit, like just out of pure love, pure joy, pure service. And so that's one thing that God really spoke to me in my season of singleness, was how to do things lovingly and joyfully and willingly. So I've always been someone who would do things for people, but it's a bit grudgingly, if that makes sense. So I just wanted a heart of like a pure heart of service, joyful, willing service. And like, I just think that period of singleness really gave me time to really work on that area of my life. And I feel like it's really paid off. Like, I've been married to my husband for 2.5 years, and he's a goer. He's always doing stuff. He's always doing stuff. But like, there's so many times, he doesn't drink tea. He doesn't leave a tea bag on the bench, but he'll like leave, I don't know, like he'll like this morning, for example, he I grabbed him a yogurt out of the fridge and to have on his way to work. And he's unscrewed the lid of the yogurt and just sat on the bench and walked to work. And there was not one part of me that was annoyed at the fact that I had to put that yogurt lid in the bin. And I don't know, like, I just have realizations like this so often where I think, thank you, God, for fully transforming my heart, because there's no way that I could have that attitude without God. Like, he is the one who helps me to just want to joyfully serve my husband. And it's not like Jordan does it out of disrespect. Like, I think that there's definitely boundaries that you have to put in place where, like, if Jordan was like, I'm going to make her do everything for me and I'm just going to put all my rubbish on here or whatever, he doesn't do it out of that. Like, he's just so busy and he's focused on what he needs to do today. He's got a massive day, and there's not one part of him that would have thought like, oh, I should probably just put that in the bin and save my wife a job. Like, it's not like he purposely makes more work for me, but I am so glad that my heart posture is like, I'm going to clean up that rubbish. Like, if he has an ice cream at night time, he'll leave the wrapper on the couch. There's not one part of me that thinks, oh, how dare he do that and just expect me to put it in the bin. Like, that's my old mindset, but my whole being has like changed to just desire to want to do things for him, and not even to get noticed. I think that I would have, back in my previous relationship, have done things and wanted to get noticed and be thanked for things. So it was, again, out of a selfish ambition. So I would do things to selfishly get recognized. But God has been the one that's changed my heart to be like, there's not once when I say to Jordan, like, oh, I picked up this, and this for you today. Like, I don't need him to recognize what I do for him, because I don't do it for that reason. I literally want to do things for him. Like, I want to serve him well. I guess also just wanting to thank my husband, because he does make it a lot easier, because he is someone who, so if there is certain jobs that I really don't want to do for him, he knows that, like, I know that I can say to him, like, oh, like, I'm going to use one example. And this may seem really petty, but if you've been married, you'll fully understand. Sorry, my dog's just having a drink in the river. You'll fully understand that petty things can fester and can grow into something massive. One job that I really don't like, which I feel like at the start of our marriage, he definitely expected me to do, was to fill up his drink bottle. And if anyone knows my husband, he's a guzzler. He'll guzzle his whole drink bottle and then sit it there. And then like 10 minutes later, want another drink. And so at the start of our marriage, he'd be like, oh, you haven't filled my drink bottle up yet, kind of thing. Like, I don't say this to make him sound bad. He's not bad at all. But I think just because I willingly like to do a lot of things for him, I think that's just one job that he kind of also expected me to do. And that's one job I really don't like doing. And so I spoke to him about it one day, and I was like, your drink bottle, like filling up your drink bottle is not my duty, and I don't want it to be. I love serving you in so many ways, but that's just one job. I don't want to have to think, oh, I better check my husband's bottle all the time to make sure there's enough water in it for him, so he's not disappointed that he goes and has a drink. And like, so this is what I'm saying. This sounds petty, but if you have been married for a little while, you would definitely understand that petty little things can fester and grow into massive things that cause a lot of disruption in a marriage. So I'm really glad that like God gave me a heart of gentleness towards my husband as I explained that to him. And he was like, oh, 100%, that, like, I'll definitely do that. Like, I don't expect you to do it. Like, don't worry. And I felt like I had the expectation on me from him, but he didn't even realize he was portraying that expectation on me. And so now he knows, he fills up his own drink bottle and he's totally happy to do that. So it's one job I was like, okay, this is a boundary. I don't want to have to fill up your drink bottle. Like, you're not a child. You can fill up your own drink bottle. And I know that he can also put his own rubbish in the bin, but like, they're the kind of things I don't mind doing. And like, God's really helped me to love him in that way. And after having that conversation, there's so many times where I joyfully fill up his drink bottle without him even realizing, and I don't need a thanks for it. And so I just think God's really helped me to have that selfless heart of service towards my husband. And something I'm really grateful for, because as I said, a lot of the times, a lot of my actions and my service was from selfish ambitions. So that was one area that I really, really asked God to help me in my season of singleness, was to be able to just serve with a glad and willing heart. I thank God every single day that he's helped in that area of my life. Another topic I really want to chat about was God changing the priorities in my life. So my previous relationship, my desire was always to have a lot of money. So I definitely worshipped money for sure. And I wanted to make it really high in the world. So I wanted to make a really high name. Is that the way I'd explain it? Like, I wanted a really good name for myself. And so I wanted to be able to like move up in all the levels of my job. At that time, I was really wanting to become a financial planner, and I studied financial planning at uni and then went and worked for a financial planning firm. And so I really, like, my aim was to, like, the idea of being a mum was a distraction in my head was a distraction or a roadblock to achieving all that my heart desired to achieve in my life. And so even though I've always thought, yeah, I'm going to be a mum one day, it was always, oh, but like, it's just going to be annoying. Like, kids would just distract me. Kids will be a distraction from my dreams and from the things that I want to achieve. And so that's one area that I really wanted God to change in my life when I first became a Christian in my season of singleness. I wanted to get my priorities straight. So I think that the first way that God really helped me to do that was to quit my job. And bit by bit, I actually ended up losing everything that I thought made me successful and made my name great. One by one, there was just so many things that happened. So I had like a dream car of mine, which I absolutely loved, finally got it, and then went to Bible school. Someone crashed into me and totaled off my car. I obviously quit my job. Then I went to Bible school, and literally, like, it was a long story, but like, I said goodbye to a house that I just built. And like, there's just so many things. I was almost forced to let go of everything that I thought that was helping me to feel successful and feel like I achieved greatness in life. And I think that was God's way of really showing me what what my priorities should be and what actually matters in life. I slowly but surely used up a lot of money that was in my bank account, but God always provided more. I ended up going to volunteer for YWAM in Townsville. Well, first I went and traveled in my van, and then went, to YWAM Townsville, and I ended up staying there for a whole year, and that's something I never expected to do. So I didn't earn money for that amount of time. Like, it was just, there was not one part of me that was stressed about finances, and there was not one part of me that missed having money in my bank and missed having certain assets. I finally realized that they're not the things that make me feel great, and they're not the things that were actually fulfilling all my desires, but living a life for God was. Doing things out of, as I said, like serving with a loving heart was so much more fulfilling than any of the things that I used to think would make me feel fulfilled. So I'm really, really grateful for God in that season too, because I ended up, so some complete honesty here and vulnerability, this is something I never wanted. I always wanted to end up getting into a relationship and being married and bringing a lot into the relationship. Like, I would help bring a lot of finances, bring some assets. I would have loved to have bought, owned a house at that time when I got married. So I was bringing assets into a marriage. And total vulnerability here, I literally bought $10,000 into our marriage. Like, that's how much I had in my account. When Jordan and I got married, I transferred it over to his account because that was becoming our joint account. And that was my contribution to our marriage. I was a 30-year-old woman when I got married, and that is all I had to my name. And I would usually be so embarrassed and so full of shame to admit that. But right now I'm like, I honestly don't care that that's all I bought into a marriage, because I actually ended up bringing so much more. I bought my own character into the marriage, which is someone who no longer worships money, no longer cares about the things of the world, but cares about the things of God and just cares about people. I'm quite proud, without being prideful, I don't know if that's possible, of the character that I brought into the marriage. I get a little bit emotional when I think about it, because I used to just think this is just embarrassing. What sort of person would want to marry me when I can't actually contribute financially to anything? But God had taken me through a season where all of a sudden I started worshiping him and not money. And I think that that's a bigger asset than anything financial that I could have brought into our marriage. God, it just has such a beautiful and funny way of making all of our dreams come true. So instead of me bringing financial stability into our relationship, because that's the expectation I had on myself, I ended up marrying someone who was very wise with his finances, but also very generous. So someone my husband is amazing. He literally he's planned, he's financially set himself up in a way where he could provide for his wife and his children in a way where his wife would never have to actually work. Not to say that he's some rich man. I don't want to make him sound like that. But he's just has been very, very wise with his finances and his investments. And he loves the fact that he can provide for me. And that's so beautiful. It's so humbling for me because it's the kind of wife I never desired to be. I didn't ever want to be someone who was dependent on my husband or anything like that. I just had such a bad attitude toward that way of living or whatever. But God's just really humbled me, and he's just really gifted me with a husband who did have that financial stability behind him, in a way where I didn't have to be the one that provided that and bought that, because if I did, my heart probably would have been in such a bad place still. I still probably would have really held on to finances and loved the feeling of having money. Like the fact that he really humbled me in a way and got my priorities straight before I got married, but then still blessed me with a husband who was very wise and prepared and generous with his finances, but really smart with it at the same time. I just think that he has such a funny way of doing that. It's like I ended up having my desires fulfilled in that way without me being the one that did it. So it's like fully just relying on the Lord in that way, which is just so beautiful. Just God just gives us so many wonderful gifts. It just makes me so happy knowing that we actually do serve a good Father. Like I used to think that God was some mean father in heaven just looking down on us all, wanting to punish us all for all the bad things that we do. But in reality, he's such a loving father who just wants to give us good gifts. So this talk has went on for a little bit longer than I thought. So I only really went through two things that I was constantly praying about and working through with God in my season of singleness. So the first one was my spirit of generous and willing service. And I just think that that's really paid off in my marriage already in so many ways. I just love doing things for my husband. And it's not like he expects me to do any of them, but I just love it so much. It's a full joy of mine to have a husband to help and like to do things for. Seriously, like it's like one of the biggest gifts in my life. It is the biggest gift in my life from the Lord, is to have a husband who I can lovingly serve with like all my heart, just want to just do whatever I can for him. And I thank God for that, because that is not my original heart. God has had to fully transform that. And number two was my priorities in my life. I just had them all in the wrong order. Not to say that, financial priorities and things aren't good, but the order of importance in my heart was not good. I put everything on status and wealth. And it's not about that at all, because I quickly realized how much better it feels to be rich in Christ and in heavenly riches, like my character. Like I wanted to work on building my character rather than building my status and wealth here on this earth. And like, as the Bible says, like you can't take any of your finances and stuff into heaven. So what's the point? Like, it's not like saying to not be wise with your finances, because the more wise we can be with our finances, obviously the more generous we can be, and we can help people and we can use it for God's goodness and God's glory. But as long as that's not something that we're worshiping, like we worship God, we don't worship the things that God gives us. So the second thing was just changing my priorities to the priorities that God wanted me to have. And I'm so grateful, because it has built my character, and a character is the most important thing I think we can spend time on, is strengthening our character. And I think that that's the biggest gift that I've brought into mine and Jordan's marriage, and how wonderful that God's helped build my character in those 5 years of singleness, so that I can be the best wife ever. Like Jordan did not care. Like, I just think even Jordan would say, if he was watching this right now, he'd say, I would rather you bring in the character you brought into our marriage than any amount of money. And so it feels really good that God can fully just transform our heart. And so I guess my hope for this chat is that if you are a single person, that you can start to really pray about, if you're a Christian, or just think about and plan and journal about even the sort of areas that you want to work on in your life. If you are a Christian, God is definitely there with you and helping you to like helping transform your heart day by day. It's not going to happen with the click of a finger, and you will never actually reach the desired amount that you want to anyway. Like, so even though I had 5 years of singleness, I probably could have continued benefiting for like 15, 20 years of singleness, you know what I mean? But the fact is that God is so good that there's still so many points that he gently brings up in my life now, that, and I even more so now that I'm married. I think we realize how selfish we are when we get married. I think that it just comes out in full force. It's like, wow, you are so selfish, Raya. Hello, dog. Anyway, so there's so many things that I still need to work on, and God's just so gracious and patient with me through that process. So don't have the expectation that you're all of a sudden going to reach like this perfect wife before you get married, because it's a journey that you're forever going to be on. And I think that's the joy of living life with God, is the fact that, you know, we can work on our character, building our character. We can work on our weaknesses all the time, and we have a gracious and patient God who's there along the journey with us, helping us to achieve things that we as humans are not able to on our own. But with God we can fully be transformed, and just to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. And yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. There's going to be times where you may just feel like you're going backwards, but you're still learning and you're still developing your character. So I hope that motivates you and encourages you to prioritize some things, to work on your priorities, to work on your weaknesses. And yeah, I'd just love to hear your feedback on this chat as well. So make sure that you let me know in the comments what you thought, and if you have any questions, anything else you want me to explain in more detail. And make sure you also subscribe to this channel, because I do share 1 or 2 videos every single week. They're usually, you know, health and fitness things, they're exercise videos or workouts with me in real time, they're healthy recipes, any sort of health and wellness, like overall health and wellness tips. That's what I love to share, because that is what I'm passionate about. So make sure you're subscribed, and I shall see you next time.